Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy, technology, principles, applications. This video is about magnetic energy and the Magnogen Engine. That is one of the units on the website. The unit on the website is the improved, modified sister version of the original unit that was running in vehicles back in the 70s before our dear friends that are paid by our taxes, their salaries are paid by our taxes, by our dear friends that have our best interests at heart, destroyed the units and took them away. And so they could come back someday. So, no hard feelings, okay? It's all good. It just wasn't time yet anyway. So the Magnogen is an interesting unit. Relative to its size and its weight, it puts out 480 horsepower, and it puts out continuous horsepower, continuous with no fuel, okay? Zero emissions and zero fuel. The fuel in it is magnetic energy. And I know these videos I've been saying a lot about etheric, magnetic / etheric energy. And that is the input, okay? It's also the output. There's different forms of this energy, and they all get transmuted and transformed and take place inside of these units, and then they go back into nature the way they should. Now I need to make something clear about these videos because I use conventional terminology because it makes it easier to explain the principles behind these units. And if I completely abandon conventional terminology, it's going to be like, what on earth are you saying? So when I say paramagnetic and diamagnetic and ferromagnetic, from the magnetic energy model point of view, they're all magnetic. The difference is maybe like elements or that are not magnetized in the conventional sense. Maybe their etheric or magnetic flow is not as organized, and it is a different resonance than what might be found in a actual magnet. But that doesn't mean there isn't energy flowing through them at all times. They do have magnetic energy flowing in them and through them. And that is hugely important because the dynamics of this unit require us to influence other elements with magnetic fields. I've talked about this before, but it's this point I can't even stress how important this is. The magnets are simply the conduit. They are simply we are using the energy that flows in and out of them to influence other elements, paramagnetic and diamagnetic elements, so that we can do what we want with those elements to make a unit function. And so part of that is, and this principle, it's just, I can't even overstate how important it is to realize that. Because you can take, like, let's just assume we're using copper coils. And a lot of times, like in the Magnogen unit, you'll see like cotton coated copper wire. And part of that reason is because we want that space gap. There's a subtle space gap that's created between the windings on those coils, and that allows for a larger buildup of magnetic energy presence in those. And then also something that our dear friend Nikola Tesla, used as well. We have hollow core coils in the Magnogen, and the hollow core, you'd say, wow, that's kind of weird. I mean, but the thing is, when you have an etheric vortex of energy, the hollow core coil actually serves a very important function to us, and it helps build up that energy that we need. So if you imagine a whole bunch of magnets, because this unit is loaded with different magnets, and they're passing by coils in alternating polarities. So, and then from a magnetic model point of view, we would call that the inflow and outflow of energy. As you expose a copper coil to an inflow and outflow of that magnetic energy, that magnetic field, something very important happens in that. And the keys to this are given in the units, because the ratios, which are so difficult to obtain, the ratios for how many windings you need, the thickness of the wire, and the pattern that the coils are wound in relationship to, and not only in the composition of the coils and then the core, but then in relationship to the strength of the magnetic fields, the composition of the magnets that are used, and how we encase those magnets to make sure their fields are properly directed. All of those variables are given in this technology. And that's so important because that allows us to then move forward from these units and move into the crystal age and other things that are so cool. But as you expose those copper coils to those alternating magnetic fields, you get this buildup. And from a conventional point of view, you would say, well, there's a buildup of charge, or there's electrons that are starting to become available. But that's not really, we're not interested in the electrons any more than just they might serve a minor purpose. What we're really interested in is the alternating buildup of magnetic fields that takes place in each of those coils as these magnets spin past them so fast. And so as you get this balance of an inflow and outflow in each of those coils, and you keep in mind those coils are all connected in series, and I'll come back to that in a minute through a commutation, we are looking for the overall balance of energy on all of the coils, because ultimately what we need to happen in the unit is we need a toroidal field to form in and around that unit. This is a toroidal field that is pulsing. It's going on and off. And there's two toroidal fields that are counter-rotating inside of each other. And so, and those represent different magnetic polarities, if you will, or inflow and outflow of etheric energy. Those interlocking, counter-rotating toroidal fields then create an interlocking, counter-rotating set of vortices that then extend high up into the ionosphere and down into the planet. And those would have what we would call a relatively neutral net charge to them. So those vortices that have those intertwining fields, that is what attracts the etheric energy. Okay? I hope I'm making that clear. So we're using the magnets to produce a response in the coils that is a balance of the inflow and outflow of the magnetic energy, and then it ends up creating the consistency of the toroidal fields that are pulsing on and off. Now the magic in that is, as our society and scientists and engineers learn to control the pulsation of those counter-rotating toroidal fields and the resulting vortices that extend from them, that is what opens the door to all of the magic and tricks that are available with magnetic energy, such as formulating and deformulating and reformulating matter and energy and creating anti-gravitic technology, plus a whole lot of other things. So we are using the magnets as the conduit, okay? Now imagine if you have like diamagnetic or paramagnetic material, and you have a disk of that, and we control the release of the magnetic energy from the coils into those paramagnetic or diamagnetic materials. We can produce an inflow and outflow magnetic field in, let's say, for example, like the magnesium ring or the aluminum ring or the discs. So here's the power of what I'm saying. We don't need to worry about the actual power of the magnets for rotation. And you don't want to do that because their magnetic lock is difficult to overcome, especially when you have high torque involved. So we use the other elements that allow us to control and create magnetic fields and inflow and outflow in the exact way that we want. So we can create them instantaneously and we can disperse them instantaneously. So that's very, very important. The cut. We're going to redo that. The coil collapse timing becomes so important, and that's why the size of the coils in relationship to the strength of the magnet and the speed of rotation, that formula is exactly what it needs to be, because we need the coil charge to collapse exactly when we want it to collapse, so that we infuse or release that charge into like a paramagnetic material. And because we have created the balance of the inflow and outflow, or the, if you want to call it, the north and south polarities in those coils, it allows that energy to be attracted by a paramagnetic material. And then also, even there may be alloys involved where they're somewhat diamagnetic and somewhat paramagnetic, because we're looking for a certain response. But the thing is, we can create a coupling between rotating disks. And so, like, imagine a paramagnetic disk, and we feed the coils into that, we feed the energy from the coils into that disk, and we reverse the coil winding so that we create opposing polarities, if you will, or an inflow and outflow of that disk. And now imagine that interacting with another disk. We can control how the polarities, when they are on and when they are off. So that gives us the ability to create a tremendous amount of a coupling of attract between paramagnetic and diamagnetic materials. And that is really powerful, because at the same time, it's very easy with those type of materials to control the release of the field. So you don't have like magnetic holdback being a factor in this process. So you have the coupling and the decoupling of those disks, which gives you tremendous torque. That's why you can have such a small unit having 480 horsepower of continuous torque. And so that's ongoing. I mean, that can go literally forever. The only thing that you have to worry about are like bearings wearing out, and even those can be magnetic depending on how you do that. So that whole principle of channeling that magnetic energy into the proper materials, that we can control the release and the buildup of those magnetic fields, is really one of the key principles to this whole device and to the other devices. So that allows us to have attract release. Attract release is another key to the process, and it's without that ability to have, we're working on attract. So we don't really care about repel, because repel is a waste of time. So what we want to do, and we don't want to really directly use the fields around the magnets, because that's a waste of time. So what we want to do is harness that energy so that we can use attract release that has so much more power and so much more versatility, and to control that energy. And then we get into the commutation. So as you have coils and you have commutators, we can control what's going on and off and the timing of everything. And that allows us to have the ability to create fields that collapse and build instantaneously. And it's a very interesting process, because the magnetic energy moves far faster than the speed of light. So the process, as the engineers and scientists really delve into the inner workings of the unit, they'll see, wow, these interactions take place beyond the speed of light. And it's a quantum exercise as well, because they take place out of space and time. So reactions that are in the fields anticipate what they need at a quantum level and attract that energy to them. And so the circuitry is actually designed that way. So you'll see like closed circuitry where you would think, wow, that's a really weird way to wire that. From an electrical point of view, that would create a total short circuit. But from a magnetic point of view, what it allows is it allows the energy to move spontaneously when it needs to move, and to maintain the randomness. Because as soon as we get those toroidal fields built around that unit, and you have those vortices attracting in etheric energy, that etheric energy comes in neutral, and it comes in randomly. And so it's so critical that the circuitry can accommodate a random flow of energy. And I know this is kind of high level stuff, but I'm trying to give an explanation, kind of the theoretical explanation, some of the principles involved, so that for those people, and I know there's engineers and there's scientists in other countries that look very closely at these units, when they look at modifying them and trying to change them into something more electrical, the reason that doesn't work is because you have to think etherically, like you have to think magnetically, and you cannot allow certain electrical processes to take place in the unit, otherwise it won't work. And one of the mistakes that some engineers made on the unit is they thought it would be more efficient to basically encapsulate the magnet, half of the magnet faces, because they were thinking, well, they're not doing anything. They're trying to think monopole. And that's really not the way to think. The magnets have to have a full functioning field around their faces, their primary faces. And that even includes the ones that are not near the coils. And so if you don't do it that way, which many designers they'll say, well, for the sake of cost, and they'll, cutting corners, they'll put like an aluminum wall right outside the primary face of the magnets that are not facing the coils. And then what happens is the magnets, their energy gets drained after a year or two. And so we maintain this position that the magnets are an inflow and outflow of energy. You need to let those fields form properly, because what's happening is you're getting like 84 toroidal fields forming and pulsating exactly the way we need them to and interacting, and that contributes to the overall field around the unit. And so I hope that wasn't too high level, and we'll probably do a second video on this at some point, but I wanted to at least get some of these principles out there. And check out the Magnegen unit. It's pretty cool, and it could definitely revolutionize transportation on the ground, the air, the water, and space. And so with that, I will see you next time.